Alright, welcome to video 9.4 of that Looc. I'll be talking to you guys today about not what you see on the screen here. What the heck is this? This is just some assembly code I was working on. I will be actually talking to you about some extensions to the RPG game. This is one of the extensions I had in mind that you could develop on your own as qualifying for the extensions that you have to do for Game Project 2. So, Game Project 2, if you remember back to when I talked about the initial implementation. So, remember the Game Project 2, these are the requirements for it. I'm going to be putting these up shortly on D2L. By the time you watch this video, they'll already be there. Game Project 2 is an RPG for XNA, and you're to create your own RPG. There's three separate options you can take. Option A is an art-heavy option. This is a full modification with art changes. 50% of the character's sprites are replaced, including the main character. You have your own maps. 75% of maps assets have been replaced, and 50% of the custom sprites for the maps, for example, trees and things like that. And then you only have to write new code to support the above assets if you have issues getting those assets in. Option B is the code-heavy option, where you would do modification of the code on at least 4 code enhancements. I'm going over one additional code enhancement today that would count for this, so pay attention to that. This is basically the different combat mechanics. I'm going to put in a button mashing mechanic that would qualify as one of the code enhancements. Another enhancement would qualify the AI tutorial that I gave for following you in Section 8 would qualify. Additionally, you could implement stores. In addition, you could perhaps implement a first-person view of combat. You could also implement AI that tracks you down, AI that follows you during non-combat situations and initiates fights, perhaps. Branching storylines as well. And there might be some other things you could do with as far as code enhancements. Option C would be a story-heavy option, where you would basically create a quest mod. So you'd create an entire storyline using the existing assets. You'd rewrite all the existing quests, different place names, different character names, that kind of thing. You draw out some new maps using the existing assets, and you'd place new encounters. All told, when it's all said and done, this option would have the longest amount of gameplay. This would have about 30 to 60 minutes worth of gameplay, just because mainly you're doing, the main work you're doing is finishing up the game with the existing assets and the existing code. So this is a story and design heavy modification. So moving on to the next topics, I am going to be showing you guys how to go about creating a combat mechanic that basically encourages you to mash buttons during combat. So this is how that would work. I'm just going to show it here quick. So I modified the start position to start down by where those bad guys were and where Zenith comes and joins you. So that's why I started way down at this bottom of the map where you first fight these bad guys. So I come in here and I fight these guys. Oh man, I might actually die here. If they attack me first, there's a good chance that I die, and then if that's the case, I'll just restart. Okay, well good, I'm alive. Okay, so you'll notice here the hit A to up damage appeared. That's a new thing. When I hit attack, and if I press A quickly, I can actually increase my damage that I'm doing. So I'm going to hit attack, and then keep mashing that button. And see, I did 13 points of damage there. Normally I would do about 7 or so. And now I'm dead. But anyway, that is that's about it. I wasn't actually supposed to go and fight that guy yet. I didn't have any of my equipment or anything, but that's just for testing. As you can see, the code modifications require much less thought in terms of gameplay balance and everything like that. You can pretty much get away with just having test type stuff. Although I do want you to start, I'm using my old computer here today, so I'm on reach, unfortunately, so hence the crappy frame rate. But anyway, as I was saying, the code modification will require the smallest amount, of actual balanced storyline. So today I'm going to show you how to do that code modification, and I'm going to start by showing you a beyond compare printout of all the changes. So the changes I've made are to HUD.cs, main game description, that's just to change the spawn location, melee combat action, and combat engine. So three main files that I've had to change to get this to work. And I'm going to go ahead and keep this open while I go line by line over the changes. So here we go. I'm just copying my old project over so I can show you from scratch here. This will only take a moment. Okay, so loading up the project here. The first change I'm going to make is I don't want to have to load the go all the way down to map 4 over and over again because I'm going to be routinely testing this. So the first change I made is I set the spawn location to map 04, which is a change made in main game description.xml. So the concept that I'm going with here is basically I'm going to do a button masher design. I can bring up the design doc really quick. It's a very, very simple design doc. This is all it is. Basically, my design for the combat extension is, and I do encourage you to kind of write this stuff down before you actually start it. Basically, in this case, when the player has already selected to attack, pop up a HUD item which says press A to increase damage, or something similar. And if the player mashes button A during this time, the damage is increased by some given amount. I'm just going to save this quick as design. So I'll show you quick what I'm talking about here. Actually, never mind that. I already showed you it working. So I was just going to show you sort of where I have in mind that this should pop up, but I already showed you that earlier in this video just a few minutes ago. So never mind that. Basically, the first thing I did in getting this going was decided that I'm going to need some kind of an indication that the last thing clicked was the A button, as well as a counter indicating how many times the button was actually mashed. And what I'm going to do is basically that will be my button masher function. I'm just waiting for the game to load, so I'm going to show you this again. And the button masher is going to get increased anytime that I'm actually mashing, and then it's going to get reset to 0 whenever I'm preparing to attack, so that it can go ahead and do it the next time. I also still need to wait here. Okay, finally we're ready to get going here. So I'm going to go ahead and add some information to the state of the combat engine. So the combat engine in the role-playing game is basically where all the combat information is kept. We have the notion of a singleton here. This is a design pattern, actually, which is kind of an advanced concept. A design pattern is a type of object-oriented programming technique that allows for you to make reusable code as well as very understandable code. And in this case, the design pattern is known as a singleton. So what a singleton does is basically it allows you to have one instance and only one instance of that object type throughout the entire game. So the combat engine is going to be shared amongst all combatants. And this is just as good as a place as any to keep track of button mashing, because this is a single player game and we're only going to allow one person to be button mashing at any given time. And also this combat engine has access to everything that I possibly need. Always get that on my garbage computer that I'm using. This is like my backup to my backup computer because my kids are dominating my main computer playing Minecraft. Grumble. But anyway, as I was saying, this is where we need to put the new variables. So I'm creating some new variables here. This is what they are. I'm going to basically say public static bool is player, or I'm sorry, that's the one that I already had. Private bool, last action, OK. So OK, by the way, is the A button. That's what they have in this engine as the A button for some reason. I guess that's what they decide they liked. So if true, the player pressed A the last time we went through the loop. And this is basically just a property. I need a closing bracket down here. And that's all that is just a property that I'm going to have, that I'm going to use to set the last time the player has pressed the button. As I said, I also want to keep track of the number of mashes that have occurred. So I'm going to paste this code in here, and basically this is going to represent the number of mashes. I think it's important to put this summary information in whenever you can. That helps you with when you're using your context-sensitive menus that tell you what you're doing. So basically, the private int we're going to declare is button mash count, and the public int property of this is going to be called button mash count with a capital B, and then we're basically going to just say set this to the value. This is just a standard property like you've seen before in Dr. Bresnay's lectures. Next, we need to be able to take advantage of these properties. So in the function, I want to actually set those. So what I had to do here was, sorry about that. So what I have to actually do is I did a search on Input Manager. The Input Manager is the thing that I'm going to have to change to account for if this button has been pressed or not. So to find this quickly, I just did a quick Input Manager, search on Input Manager, and it shows up in the Update Combat Engine loop, where we're basically checking for, there's a W cheat and there's some other stuff that we're doing. There's the cheat key for W. So it's going to be somewhere around here that we want to insert. I'm going to go ahead and put it in handle input, which is right here. So this is what I said. If Input Manager is action triggered OK, then my last action is going to be equal to if my last action was false. So basically, what I want to have is kind of a nothing, a nothing. So I'm basically mimicking mashing the A button and then pausing for a brief moment and then hitting it again and then nothing. So if the last action was false, then now I am being pressed, so that counts as a button mash. So this is a button mash, so in that case we want it to go up by 1. This next one here is a button mash, so we want that to go up another 1. This one here is a button mash, so we want that to go up an additional 1. This is a button mash, so we want that to go up to 4. So this gives a count of 4. So that's basically all we need to do there. Now also in begin player turn, we want to reset this. So I'm going to go down to begin player turn right here, and I'm going to say, actually hold on a second. Begin player's turn. That's for this particular combat round. So I'm going to say button mash count equals 0 and last action OK equals false. So I'm going to start out in the false position, which actually, so I'm starting out like this, but that's okay. That is how we want to start it out. And then the button mash count is going to end up equaling 0. So in other words, we equal 0 here, and then we get to 1 after the A is pressed, and then 2 after the next A is pressed, and so on and so forth. Now, an additional thing I need to do is inside the combat engine, you'll notice one other change that I've made. Since this is a singleton, I need access to this information from another place, which is going to come up in a little bit. So I'm going to add, just like we've got the isPlayerTurn up here, somewhere. Here it is player's turn. This is actually a static, which is just doing a check singleton, which just goes in and basically sends off an exception, which is what we're covering this week if there is no active combat at this time. So if there's no active combat, we're going to throw an exception, which is basically an error message that someone else can handle, and then we can display a message saying something bad has happened. So essentially we're trying to do a combat action when combat is not going on. And then we're going to return the singleton is player's turn. The reason I need this is because we've set the last action OK to a private, and we have a public bool on last action OK. However, the singleton is a static, so we need to be able to access that static's version of both the last action OK variable property as well as the button mash count property. So again, we would do public static bool did press OK last, and this is right below his player turn. We would do check singleton, and then we would do return singleton dot last action OK. Check singleton, again, that simply returns an invalid operation exception. There's all kinds of different exceptions, as you saw from Dr. Bresnay's lecture this week, and this is just one of them, and we're going to say that no active combat has happened at that particular time. We're going to do the same thing for button masher. We're going to basically say check singleton and then return button mash count. Otherwise, we're going to set button mash count to value here. Now what I did next was I went into the melee combat action, which is inside combat actions. So actions, combat action.cs. And basically I did a search on damage because my intent here was I would basically figure out where the damage is actually occurring. And if you search through all these different hits that I got on the search for damage, you see that here's item combat, for example, melee combat action kind of made sense. And if you actually look at this, yeah, indeed, this is combat action stage returning. And here we are calculating the damage. So this right here would be a great place to, right before we apply the damage, to figure out if we should do a damage modifier due to a button mash situation. And the code I created for that would be the following. Float button mash modifier equals 1.f. So this is going to be our modifier that we multiply out by the damage down here, where we say float damage equals damage times button mash modifier. So I'm going to later define these consts, basically statics, that I'm going to say basically if the button mash counter is greater than the button mash threshold, then I'm going to create a button mash modifier which is going to be equal to some amount that I can tune. I actually start out at 1.6 initially. Then I basically multiply the damage by that button mash modifier. I round that to an int, and I pump it into the apply damage function. The the button mash mod and the button mash threshold can go up at the top of melee combat action. So if we go up to the top of melee combat action, we go to the state, this is as good of a place as any to put it. We can just put button mash mod equals 1.6f, button mash threshold equals 5. So it's going to go for 5 times before, so additional 1 here. 5 times before it actually registers that that's a button mash. And if it hits the 5 times, then it's going to multiply that damage by 1.6f, which stands for float. Again, this is a public static float. This is similar to a const in other languages or a final. Basically what it does is public static float just says there's one instance of that variable. Now this one actually can technically be changed, but that's fine. I'm just capitalizing it to denote that it's essentially meant to be a constant, never changed. That's kind of a standard notation for that, and that's how I chose to do it in this case. So that's it, I believe, for melee combat action. Yep. And then we've done combat engine. The next part we have to actually do is display this little message. So we're going to go to HUD.cs, and I basically copied, in order to pull this off, I copied the combat pop-up texture pretty much exactly, and I just basically looked at HUD.cs and eyeballed it that way. So HUD.cs, I'm going to type in OF HUD.cs here. That will quickly get me to HUD.cs. And here we can see our combat pop-up texture. I just mimicked this by using button mashup pop-up texture, button mash pop-up texture here. And then I did the same thing the next time it was referenced. And you can kind of copy this design pattern. Basically, if you have something that you know works, you might as well copy that and use it over and over again. That's sort of a standard CS way of doing it. So I need to go to load content. And this is again loading. We've done this a number of times. This is actually loading the buttons that you see, and I'll cover the actual assets in a second. We're going to want to put it below. It's a good idea to maintain, whenever you're modifying someone else's code, it's a good idea to maintain the style. So button mashup pop-up texture, then tabbed over, content.load textures 2D button mash. Let's see if there were any other additional spots where combat pop-up occurred, because if there were, I should be mimicking that. Indeed, there was another one here. Oh, actually, that's the main one that draws. So this one here, this change here, is taking place inside of draw for combat. So what I did was I scanned through this HUD looking for any place the word combat occurs, because I knew that I wanted to display basically a press A for more damage message. And I found this draw for combat function. So I go in here, and basically I see that it's doing a number of things. It's drawing the selection arrows and all that kind of stuff. And the correct place to put it is actually right under where it says is player's turn, because then it's going to draw the arrow textures. So I'm just going to draw button mashup pop-up texture, because basically if it's my turn, I'm going to allow it to draw this mashup texture. Now, everything is hooked up. The only thing we haven't done yet is we have not put in the data for it. I'm sorry, the content for it. So we're going to go up to Content Windows, and if you notice in Textures, there's a HUD section, which is where, like, for example, my combat pop-up resides. If I just open that up here, I'm basically copying this. I made a very quick little thing where I just modified that inside. I'm just going to basically copy it over here from RPG Extended. So if you take a look, content, textures, and HUD, button mash PNG. This is the one I want. So I'm going to copy this over here to my project folder, which I'm actually using is this copy one. Textures, HUD. I'm going to paste that in here, and I can show you what that looks like as soon as I add it. I'm just going to do an add to existing. Go to add, existing item, textures, HUD, button mash PNG. And here's how that looks. It just says hit A to up damage. That's what I shortened it to earlier. And I just made that in GIMP, just threw it up in GIMP and made that. So that should be it. Let's run it and see if we've got it working. I'm going to go ahead and play it, and we'll see if it worked. The max damage earlier was about 8, so I should see damage more than 8, somewhere between basically 9 and 16 points of damage, I guess. Or no, 9 and 13 points of damage. Hit new game, and again it's going to take me down to this map 4, so I'm already close to that. I've got the follow stuff in here, so this guy comes and joins me, Shenid. Let me go and fight these guys. Oh, darn it. Their turn came first, so that's kind of annoying, but... I'm going to attack. And I button mash, and he indeed does 11 points of damage. And notice it will work for him as well. He does 50 points of damage, which is kind of normal for Shenid. So, kind of makes this battle a little more feasible. Even though I just got killed there, I should be able to, without any additional power-ups now, I should be doing tons of damage, 51. Not sure if I'll actually win this fight. I guess probably not. Yep, definitely not. But I got closer in any event, so it's definitely working. And that concludes 9.4, and that actually concludes the rest of the videos for the game stuff. We're going to be going on to apps next. 9.5 covers how to install Xamarin, and that should be pretty fun. So again, remember the this video is basically the closest thing we're going to have. Let me get to the correct page here. Basically, this video is the closest thing we're going to have to a project video describing your project. So at the beginning of this, I kind of went in and I described all the requirements for the project, one of which I've just achieved for you today, and I'll just attach this to the projects page. But your projects page has now been updated with Game Project 2 right below the Game Project 1. So you can just click on that, and this has the Project 2 description. So that's what you should be working on. This is our last game project, Game Project 2. And as I said, we're going on to apps. Just a quick note to the way the schedule is working itself out. We were originally going to have a apps mini project as an actual project that you would turn in. Instead, that's going to be an assignment, which, as you know, assignments are always optional, and that's going to be due on 5/13. So that's going to be your first app project that's actually due. But your actual app, full app project will be due on will be due on 5/30, May 30th at 11:59 p.m. So this stuff has been all kind of extended out, and the app project itself is actually due on 5/20, which is just the app mini project, which is basically your task system that we'll be working on today. So it's a very simple kind of setup, and then your full project is due on the 30th. So that's about it for this time. We will see you in the next video.